So Stephanie, I'd like to welcome Stephanie. So from Wales, Stephanie is going to talk about her street ferry project, which you may or may not have seen online. I'm not going to do much of an introduction just because she's going to tell you all about it. So welcome, Stephanie.
Hello. So I'm Stephanie Roberts. I'm from South Wales, Newport, industrial city. I don't know if you know my work at all, but this is a recent piece that I did in Newport town centre. I'm majoritively a community artist. It's where my heart is really, and then I create my own works to kind of maybe address some of the issues that I see and work it out for myself, or work out maybe some of my own problems within my art, rather than sell it really. It's very personal, really. But this is one of the examples of some of the community work that I do. And she is obviously a woman. She is based on a series of 7 pieces that I did that are over life size, addressing and looking at and exploring with children how women have grown in society over the last 150 years. And this was the 60s with multiculturalism coming to Newport, and the first mayor of Newport. So she's shaken off the bounds that tie her. I'm showing this piece because what I'm here to talk to you about today, although I'm actually doing a workshop tomorrow which is about another side of my work, which is what I call contoured mosaics, which is using metal to create height differentiation within the work. And I'm running a workshop tomorrow with that, but I'm not talking about or sharing any of that today. So as you can see, it says all women deserve power, protection and respect. That's what I'm here to talk about today. It is a project that I've unwittingly started, called the Street Ferry Project, and they were started, or I came about doing it as a response to the murder of Sarah Everard. I didn't know what to do when I heard that news. It was like the pinnacle moment of despair for women and children, and I just had to do something. The visual wasn't my thing. So I went to my studio and stared at the floor, thinking, what do we do? What can I do? Obviously, I can't change everything. I knew that. But I thought I must be able to do something. I'm a community artist. This is where my passion is. It all started when, I'm glad you just walked in, Carrie. It all kind of started when, funnily enough, Carrie was finishing mosaicing her house, and she asked me if I would kindly come and help with her house. And I was just making a series of pieces that had wings to them. I don't know if you can see up there, but there's a figure looking up with a backpack of wings on her back. I was going through quite a few issues at the time, and luckily I walked straight into the right place, the treatment rooms. There was just such a plethora of support in that space that I made this little fairy like this that I sent to somebody to say thank you, particularly for the support they'd given me. Moving on, that was 2017-ish, something like that. Moving on, a couple of years, Sarah Everard has been murdered. Another incident of misogyny in public spaces that, as I said, what can I do? Staring at the floor of my studio, I saw the waste materials Francesca, we've got conscience, and it's annoying sometimes, but it's there, and we have to act on it. But I started staring at all these pieces, and I remembered the little fairy that I'd made, and thought, I'm going to make some fairies. Of course, that's going to solve everything. So made these two little fairies. I have a strained relationship, or had a strained relationship with my father. He wasn't really there, but the one thing that connected to the really powerful aspect of him was always thinking of the daffodil, the Welsh girl. So she was holding a Welsh daffodil, and obviously the symbol of a flower in remembrance. So these were my little gifts to Sarah and everybody else that had lost their life or had suffered by the hand of a man in a public space. So what am I going to do with these little fairies? I was thinking, what am I doing? I didn't have my car, it was in the garage. I'm walking home. I'm going to take these little fairies for a walk, and I'm going to just see what happens as I walk. So just around the corner from my studio, it's in the industrial kind of area of Newport, I come across this. So I put a little fairy by and take a photograph. That isn't there now, by the way, I took it down. But just the ridiculous language that is used, that surrounds us. This is where the prostitutes hang out, so a little fairy went there. As I walked, I placed them in places that I felt uncomfortable and that I had been uncomfortable in my time, but I also sort of put them in places where I started questioning what I was seeing. Is this positive? I didn't understand it. It felt ambiguous, and I think we all felt quite vulnerable at that time. Everything was so heightened, and we were in lockdown as well, so there was the insecurity and the fear was kind of in the air, wasn't it? Sort of ruminating very heavily. Emergency, and it was just like, oh my God, these signs, it's like they're everywhere. It was like cliff, mud, stuck, water, drowning. It was just emergency. We're in a state of emergency. Then I stumbled across these two lovely lads, quite happily having a couple of beers and a spliff by the river, and I was kind of like wandering around, kind of my fairies, just take a photograph, and there the bridge looks quite good in the background, and I kept wandering around looking at them, just going, I'm going to have to talk to them. So I sidled up. Hi, do you want to see my fairy? I didn't say that, but I started talking to them. They were we were kind of wondering what you were doing. You've kind of been wandering around. It was like, yeah, I was a bit shy to talk to you actually. And they said, anyway, I'm wandering around because I've got these little fairies. And they were like, oh, let me have a look. And we started talking about what they were about. I had no clue really what I was doing, but I was kind of making it up on the spot. And these guys were like, oh, these are great, and like agreed with everything that I was saying, that we're in a state of emergency and what we're going to do. So together we conjured up this little plan that they were going to make a little pledge and hold the fairies and have their photographs taken. So there they are. I continued my walk into town, and one of the hotspots of trouble in the centre of town, and I don't know if anyone can notice the mosaics in the background, the wonderful Kenneth Budd mosaics. They have been cleaned, so they do look a little bit healthier than that, but they've got their own issues and troubles and concerns, which is something that we might talk about later. So absolutely a street fairy had to go there. I kept walking, it was getting dark, and then just suddenly as I was walking underneath the train tracks, this little beam of light, and there the street fairy sat, and I was like, oh my God, illumination, this is where it's going, this is what it's potentially about. how can we illuminate the dark places? Maybe not literally, but in another way. So I raced home. The vigil was going on. This was mine. And I wrote about it, and I shared my little journey on social media. People started sharing. Sorry, I'm really dry. Whose water is this? I'm just using somebody else's, I think, so. So I shared it on social media, and then people started, I had some of my own language, and then people started bringing their language to it and taking a sense of ownership themselves on these little fairies. Everyone just resonated with what I'd talked about. I'd taken rubbings of them and just made as many as I could. I was placing them around streets. I was sticking them up in places. People were asking for them, so I was sending them to them. And I must have made about 150 in a couple of weeks. And when people were asking for one, people were telling me their stories. People were saying what happened. People were being given permission, as someone said, to address. And it was quite remarkable. And I had all these photographs coming in of where these little fairies had gone. And there are some of them there. Even some exchanges took place as well. But they went all over the country. They're now in America, the Bahamas, in New Zealand. They're all going through Europe. It's not massive, but it's chugging away. This is another piece of my work, and if anybody knows my work, it's my logo. This is actually more like what the piece looks like. It sits above my sofa in my living room. It's 4 foot, and it's got the Buddhist mantra Green Tara sat in the middle of it. It's a very private piece, that's why it's in my living room, and it was about my own struggles living in a city made in 2008. But because we were in lockdown, a lot of the time I didn't want to go to my studio, to be honest. So I made a lot of fairies at home, and I'd sit down. I'd be reading the messages or the requests for fairies, and I'd be making them. And suddenly it started taking its toll on me, and I found it quite difficult. So I had to take a break, and I had to go, hang on a minute, well, I've got to look after myself as well here. So what I did is I reconnected to this piece that I made years ago, which was Green Tara. And what she does, if you don't know, is that she takes all negative energy from women and she cleanses it and she hands it back out cleansed. And I just kept suddenly remembering that. She sat right behind me. It's like, oh my God, that's what I'm doing. I'm taking this in, I'm making these things, and I'm passing it back out. Adopt that methodology, and then this won't stick. So I started making again. And people kept asking. I had to start charging because I was making them, but it was all like to pump back into trying to keep it going. They're made of all scraps from my studio floor. The arms and legs are made out of old bank cards. As much of it as scrap as possible. So this is where a load of youth hang out and terrorise anyone that's wandering around. Some more Kenneth Budd mosaics. This is right in the centre of town when you've got these underpasses. It's a really horrible place, but beautifully adorned with Kenneth Budd. We don't know how long for, though, unfortunately. Just to bring David Bowie back into the story. This is under the M4 along the canal. And then at last, lockdown broke and I was allowed out. So obviously the first thing I did was go, anybody want to make a ferry? And so we sat outside a pub and people came and made ferries, fathers and mothers and children and women, and loads of people came. It was a wonderful, wonderful thing, and we started carrying on with the rubbings of all the ferries. I'm allowed out, so of course I'm going to go to a festival. So I went to a festival with pocketfuls of ferries and gave them out as I was running workshops, doing something else. But I had a beautiful opportunity to talk to people and go, okay, we may be doing this workshop, but can I tell you about my street ferries? So the kids and the parents would go away with the street ferries too. It was a wonderful opportunity to, as you know, as festivals, it can get a bit crazy at times. So there was a lot of little casualties around the place. So I'd see quite a lot of women being on their own, being quite vulnerable. So I'd be able to go over and just go, can I give you a present? And just handle them a little ferry. And they'd just be like, and I disappear. And make sure they're all right, obviously, but disappear. I even gave what's his name, Johan Wright, the evil one from Game of Thrones. Who's that actor? Anybody watch the Game of Thrones? No, you don't look like a Game of Thrones audience. Well, yeah, that was my claim to fame moment. I destroyed that, didn't I? He got one though. And then, of course, BAMM graciously told my story. I then went into more communities, and this is where we sort of like, the more I made, the more they start coming to life. There was so many different, it's such a beautiful process making them. Just the tiniest little move and a whole new character and story sort of like comes out within them. So it was just brilliant to do that with people and to see how excited they got once it sort of came to life. So we started going into almost like storyboards, that kind of thing. What are we saying? What's the situation? We're just trying to not have it from my perspective, but trying to get the voices of my community. When I say short film, it's a bit of a lie. It's not a short film. This is my first attempt at animation, by the way. So that was fun. It was lovely to just bring it bring it to life, and I couldn't have done it without the funding from the Arts Council, who helped me to interact with many different communities. I then took this idea of, can we make an animation? I mean, I'm doing this with like tiniest bits of money. I'm relying on the little mosaic, the little fairies that I'm selling as well, and just doing it all off my own back. I think, how can I do this with kids with really small amounts of money? I thought, right, I'll go into schools, and luckily I'd worked with a group of women's organisation called Go Girls, and they heard about my street fairies. Was like, oh, you can come to our school, or come with us into schools, I wanted to think very carefully about how to approach the subject, and handle that very delicately. So I decided to bring in another artist, Shamiza, who is an Afghanistan artist, who she didn't come, by the way. I was just using her. That would have been amazing. I was using her way of explaining how her difficulty, her fears are so massive. So if someone like Shamiza's fears are so massive, how does she go about addressing it? So she does something called dreaming graffiti, where she sort of takes photographs of various places, because it's so difficult for her to actually go out and do these things because of her vulnerability. And to do that, she takes the photographs and then she'll paint on the photographs. So what I did with the children then is we made the fairies, which is always one to keep, one to gift, and one to place somewhere, is always the triangle of the ethos of making them. And the kids came up with a very short little animation, I haven't got it here, but of a little fairy dancing around an environment of somewhere in Newport that they feel uncomfortable. And it was great. That was a little snip of it. Funding's dried up for me. I am in a position where I'm now trying to collate everything that I've done, and sit back and just sort of have a little think about it. So I've been just trying to sort of raise some funds and keep it ticking over, even though I'm not outreaching so much at the minute. Although I have been with Afghanistan community in Cardiff, and I work with the Roma community a lot in Newport as well. Those things are sort of like ticking on, which are really, really interesting projects. But I make little fairy things. I brought little fairies with me if anybody is interested in purchasing a little fairy. I'll put them at the back. They're pin badges or necklaces. That's one of the fairies that's now been painted over, but she's one of the ones that's actually still remaining, but I think they did me a favour, because that's just beautiful. Yeah, I think that's everything. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. That was absolutely amazing. Really enjoyable to listen to. We've got some time for questions. Does anybody have any questions they would like to ask? Yes, please. Kate.
Have you worked a lot with the boys at school as well as the girls about whether they're addressing their misogynistic views to going back to the original issues?
So at the minute, I've just been working with women and girls. I don't want it to stay that way, but at the minute, until I kind of really understand what the girls and women want to discuss and how we discuss this together, really, because I know it's about togetherness, that is the only way, but I'm not quite there yet. but it's all kind of in the pipeline. My ideal is that I turn this into a CIC, a community interest company, and within that, then we can have different branches, like the sister project, we can have the brother project, and so on. So that's kind of where I'm hoping to go with it. So it's coming. There's starting conversations, but it's big, and it's got to have the right people involved in it to do it. And I don't know, to be honest, if I'm the right person to actually host that. But yeah, hopefully it'll be coming. Thanks.
Any other questions?
That's good. Yeah.
One question I had before. Yeah, I'm just wondering about a commercial nature to your lovely little fairies. Do you supply them to shops, or how have you gone down that avenue?
At the minute, they're just people ask me, can I have a fairy, and I send them one. That's how business-minded I am.
See, I think as a product, they really would, they would work. It's something that a certain type of shop would take on.
Yeah. I've always meant to approach places. I mean, I've had a few up in a local art centre for sale, and they said, but I've not done it as an actual. I don't know. It's a weird one. It's a weird one because it's so personal, and it's. But if I can do it so that the project can gain a bit more momentum, then that would be great. And that's why I want to go to funding for the Arts Council to see if I can get an R&D to see the feasibility, or a feasibility grant of setting up the CIC. And within that, there will be all the different aspects. So I've got my feelers out in different schools to make steering groups and different community groups. I'm working with the Muslim community as well, getting my way in slowly. But these things take time, and you have to build the trust up with different communities, and they have to know me and they have to trust me to work with them. So, but. Yes, I should, and thanks for the kick. But yes, is that? Oh,
Question at the back.
you put my glasses on.
Thinking about it, I'm in Whitby, there's lucky duckies.
There's a what, sorry?
There's lucky duckies, and they're glass ducks, which a lot of men take all around the world when they're on business. And I'm thinking, these angels could be something that men and boys could be interested in, because they have this, the lucky duckies are really quite big, they go all over the world, but they have a moral with them, which is to keep people safe.
Right, okay, yeah.
And you'll see them taking photographs on Facebook, and they will be all around the world, and there'll be this little lucky duck. But I don't see your angels.
Yeah, fairies. Fairies.
Well, she's the thought behind this.
Yes, no, it's brilliant. I mean, I think there's quite a lot of different kind of objects that, that do a similar thing. It's not, it's not unique, but yes. I do make them with boys. It's not that I don't make them with boys. They tend to not want to make the fairy, but I say you can make whatever you want, as long as you put the fairy wings in it somewhere. So they create these lovely little abstract kind of things, structures or monsters with and we have conversation. It's always with conversation. But I've been really struggling to get the support actually from charities to come in with me to be the safeguarding side of things, and that's why it's had to be quite slow. I've spent the last 2 years trying to get on a course for safeguarding, and they just keep getting cancelled in front of me, or I don't get appointments, or I just don't quite understand it. And until I have that training myself, I don't want to be going into it. It's not my profession, that's not my profession. I'm an artist, I find ways to talk to people. Yes.
Not so much a question as kind of a suggestion. I'm just thinking about the whole. It's very difficult to engage. When I was talking with some people, it's very difficult to engage with men and boys when it comes to art and mosaics. And I get why they wouldn't want to be making the fairies because it's not very boyish. But actually, just speaking from my own experience and when I was little, and my attitude towards women and girls in particular, is I wanted to be a protector. I wanted to be able to be there, and your strapline about all women needing, deserve to be protected. If you get boys to build little shields or little swords, boys want to slay an enemy, and obviously the enemy in this case is actually abusive boys or abusive men, and those who aren't protecting women. So giving them a symbol, thinking again, I don't want you mansplaining or anything like that. It's only just coming from my own heart. To give them a symbol that would allow them to go, do you know what, I'm going to stick little shields around because I want people to know, especially if the message goes around little shields, that there are guys out there, boys and men, who just want to show that sign of protection to women and things.
Well, they have done things like that when they've been making fairies, going, I'll make a little character, but I'll have its wings doing something else, and turn them in a different way, or or I'll make one, but I'm going to give it to my mum, and so some of them will engage, but I just haven't gone there yet. But that's thank you. I'm up for any conversation, any way of, because I'm just a little person that's dyslexic and not very good at getting it all together at times. So any help, then any ideas, brainstorming, then I'm well up for having a conversation. Sure. Okay, thank you ever so much. Oh yes. Oh sorry. Yeah.
You referenced quite a lot of places in Newport that were where you felt vulnerable. Has your project highlighted that to the council or whatever to say these are?
Yes.
Can you see just
yes.
evidence of it?
Yes. There has been some projects that have developed in tangent, I suppose, with it, and a whole area has now got painted murals all over it to change the energy in that space, because that's what the fairies were about, really. It's like changing the energy. Sorry, I didn't say that. Changing the energy in spaces, and well, particularly with what I would say with girls is that, and why I was saying you can be your own safe space and share your safe space. Is that often we have to walk places on our own. If we can walk with somebody, that's great, but sometimes we can't. But if you have an object or something with you that can encourage you to think about something positive, I'm not alone because I've got my little fairy. It can be anything. It doesn't have to be this. But instead of walking going, I feel vulnerable, you can go, I'm not alone, or you can see a little fairy that's just been stuck up onto the underneath of the bridge, and you go, no, that fairy's got an eye on me, it's all right. It's like, yeah, no, it's all right, I got this. And just that little thing as a starting block has, I think the kids have really got taken away with them. It's like, I'm definitely wearing that in my school bag, and that's going to be on my blazer, and we've had some really deep, dark conversations as well with what's happened to a lot of girls, but that's all sort of within the Go Girls, not mine kind of thing. Did I answer that question? I don't know if it did. Is that it? Yes, oh yeah. We'll talk later. We'll go.
What do you stick them up with?
What are they getting stuck up with? What's it called?
No names.
No, it's not no
Cement.
nails.
Tell me after.
Sticks like shit.
I'll tell you after. Yeah, I've tried so many, and some don't work. That doesn't work.
No, it doesn't. No, it's
work.
rubbish, isn't it? It
Yeah,
doesn't stick like
yeah.
shit at all.
No.
Thank you, Steph. I love that you're addressing such a deep and thought-provoking issue, and I think it's relevant to so many spaces and people and communities around the place. So thank you, Steph.